Okay, now we're going to talk about Final Fantasy IX, my favorite in the series, and one of my favorite games of all time. The only other one that I like almost as much as 9 is probably 4, maybe 8, but I don't know, the story was really not complicated, just convoluted. You never knew where you were. And the junction, I mean, I liked the junction system, but the fact that it could fuck me over really pissed me off. I mean, I can't even count the number of boss battles I went into to be like, okay, I have everything set. Wait, what the fuck? I have nothing junctioned? Ah! Anyway, this is Final Fantasy IX. Okay, 9, definitely the best one, second best one in the series. 10 is the best. The characters in 9. Each one of them, there's only, let's see, Amra, Eiko, Dagger, Zindayn, Vivi, and Kina. So there's only 6 characters, and each one of those and Freya, there's 7. There's 7 characters, so there's more than I thought. But each one of those characters has an immense plot point in the story, and they all bring something to the battles, because you can build your characters differently. You can give them different abilities. But it's gone back to being real Final Fantasy. It's gone back to each character has its own class. You can change that class a little bit, but having different people available to your party changes the dynamics of your party, which is brilliant. I mean, it's definitely the best, the most well thought out one. And it's gone back to real Final Fantasy 4 and 6. Those are the ones that I count as like the classic Final Fantasies. Those are the ones that I'm comparing basically everything to, 4 and 6. Because even 1, you could make your character as a different class, but they had classes. Each character had their own class. And it's not this like blank grid of a character that you have to make everything for. It seems like in the Final Fantasy games that do that, like, they were just lazy. They just, oh, we don't want to have to change his stats while he levels up, so you do it. We don't want to have to give him magic and change the programming and do all this complicated stuff, so you do it instead. That's how it feels to play all those Final Fantasy games, especially 12. Oh my god, 12. And 7 more, not as much so, but 12 is probably worst about that. So and throughout the story, you have different people available in your party. Like, sometimes you don't have. Sometimes Dagger isn't in your party. She's your white mage. It's a little bit harder to heal, making those parts a little bit more challenging, and you have to change your strategies. You have to actually think about what you're doing, and so you can't just change everybody to. You always have a healer. You always have a heavy attacker, and you always have like your third, which I usually make a thief so that they can steal things and I can get items. You always have to think about where you're gonna be and what you can do with the characters that you have with you. It's great, and each character has their own, unique plot point, and there's backstory to them all. Like, you go to at least one place where that person came from, and you learn a little bit about them without it feeling like forced exposition, like Red 13's village in Final Fantasy VII. Like, I thought that was the most forced exposition of a character that I don't even give a shit about. Like, it's so forced. It felt ridiculous to me. I just didn't even want to be there. And 9, it never gets boring, and the story is incredibly well paced. There's always something going on, but it still escalates in epicness. Like, and each boss. Okay, I'll talk about that in a second. But okay, let's see. What have I talked about? Battle system, characters, story a little bit. But yeah, I guess I'll talk about the story some more. The thing I love about the story of Final Fantasy IX is it's not too convoluted where it's not like trying to be too cryptic with its metaphors and with its, you know, messages. You can understand the messages it's trying to convey, but there's also an element of it's the way you interpret those messages and how you feel about them. With a lot of Final Fantasy games, I'm talking mostly about 12 right now, there's nothing more to the story. I mean, 12 had an okay story with a lot of political intrigue, which I've never seen in a Final Fantasy game before, which was new, but there was no higher message, and there was no interpretation to it. There was no way that you could, I don't know. And I like stories with an open end, which is probably why I like 10 the best. And yeah, the world. Okay, now for the world map. The world map isn't ridiculously big and retarded like it is in 7, and it never gets boring to run around on the map, because the distance between places and the number of random battles in between, you feel like you're getting somewhere. I mean, and there's landmarks. You can see that you're making progress. In 7, it was just this blank, grassy hill. Like, even the old Final Fantasies, even 4 had, like, more landmarks than frickin' 7 does. It's all this blank, grassy field, and it's ridiculous. So, yeah, that's Final Fantasy IX. Take it or leave it.